My name is Melissa Lugo. I am a resident of West Newbury, a member of Groveland Congregational Church, and I'm a leader with the Merrimack Valley Project. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to be guiding you through this portion of tonight's discussion. As your moderator, my job is to serve as the voice of all of y'all who've spoken up before. I'm going to walk you through the questions that the people have voiced and make sure that everyone here gets their chance to speak. One by one, could you please rise and introduce yourselves to the audience?
Thank you. Check 1, 2, testing 1, 2.
Good.
Check 1, 2.
Good.
Testing 1, 2.
There we go. There we go.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Deaton, and I am running for United States Senate. And my goal here is to get people to look past labels and look at the candidate and the candidate's ideas. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Congressman Seth Moulton, candidate for U.S. Senate, because I think it's time for a new generation of leadership. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Hi, everybody. Check. Hi, everybody. This on?
Yeah.
My name is Joe Sachet. I'm a 31-year-old socialist running for the U.S. Senate here in Massachusetts. And I know that so many of the issues that we're facing in our communities have to do with the fact that the rich continue to get richer at our expense, which has been enabled by the politicians on both sides of the aisle for my entire life. And I'm excited to talk more about that with you all here tonight.
Now, you people who have just heard from your state house candidates, that part's done. Now it's time to hear from those of you who wish to represent us on the national stage. The people's voice will be heard tonight, and they need to hear yours clearly too. The questions and the structures may feel familiar from the previous portion of the program, so you're going to be asked a series of long-form questions. You'll each have 2 minutes in which to answer. Please make sure to stick to your timelines out of respect for the people who came to hear you and the other people at the table with you. And with that, let's jump on in. The first question is on housing. We all know that affordable housing is often still unaffordable, especially in regions that neighbor wealthier areas. How would you make affordable housing actually affordable to address our national housing crisis?
Thank you for that question. Massachusetts right now ranks dead last in housing affordability. And I'm proud that I'm running on actual solutions. I have a 5 million homes in 5 years nationwide plan. It takes federal land that's not being used like military bases and state lands, and it eliminates the acquisition cost, and we incentivize developers to develop the housing. You know what the #1 driver of low-income housing in America is? It's the low-income housing credit. Now imagine if you had a United States senator that didn't care about the party that's the presidency or who's in power, who just went there and fought to get those tax credits, those low-income tax credits to developers to incentivize them to build. The other thing we have to do is we have to stop looking at housing alone. It's housing and energy combined, because people are spending here in the Merrimack Valley, 56% are spending as high as 50% of their net just to make rent. But then they get hit with that electric bill that they can't afford. I talked to a New Bedford low-income housing developer. They won't develop because they're not allowed to tap into natural gas. Everything has to be electric. So I have a energy plan that expands natural gas and uses small modular reactors that will drive energy prices down in half, and it's carbon free. No carbon emissions at 97% efficiency. I also have a tokenization plan, elimination of hedge funds from outbidding first-time home buyers. And just think of this, it took 13 months to build a state empire building in New York. 13 months from the beginning to the end. It takes 2 years to pull permits just in Massachusetts, so we gotta cut the red tape. Thank you for being here.
Again, I'm Congressman Moulton, and I believe that first of all, we should plant the flag in the ground and say unequivocally, housing is a human right. If I said that housing, healthcare, and education should be human rights, that should be Democrats 3 for 30 in response to Republicans' Project 2025. And you get there by, first of all, banning private equity from buying up single-family homes and driving up prices all across America. Here in Massachusetts, we have to recognize that this is not a new problem. All right, this has been an issue for 50 years. So whatever we've been trying to date clearly is not working. And that's why I have put forward the most transformative, aggressive regional rail plan to make it faster than driving to get around eastern Massachusetts by electrifying all of our rail and finally connecting north and south stations. So every train from the north flows through to the south and west. Imagine getting from Lawrence to Boston in 30 minutes and then to the South Shore 20 minutes later. You can't live in Lawrence and work on the South Shore today. So all those jobs are cut off. You don't have access to those jobs. This plan will dramatically improve access to jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs available, and you can actually get from the job you want to the place you can afford to live. Now, this is not pie in the sky. Every other country in the world is building high-speed rail. Imagine getting from Boston to Springfield in 45 minutes. Think about that. How transformative would that be? Morocco just built a high-speed rail line, the same distance as Boston to Springfield, actually a little bit longer. Morocco has a third the GDP of just Massachusetts, okay? If Morocco can do this, there's no reason why Massachusetts can't either. So start with making it a human right, get private equity out of this, and actually build transformative infrastructure. That's the way Massachusetts should lead the nation on making housing affordable.
So I've been a community organizer for almost 10 years, and is on?
Yes.
Okay. I've been a community organizer for almost 10 years.
Use the other microphone. Seth will share with you.
How about this? So I've been a community organizer for almost 10 years, and the first issue that I organized around was housing. And I've seen for 10 years the lie that we've been told that if we just build more market rate housing, then the prices are magically going to come down. And in the 10 years that I've been organizing, rent has only gotten more expensive. And what else has happened in those 10 years is that the developers and their investors have been laughing to the bank off of our backs.
Come on.
There are a lot of politicians, we know how it is as organizers. Politicians will come around and tell you what they know you want to hear in order to get your vote. But you actually have to look underneath what they're saying. And the fundamental problem with housing is that politicians are allowing developers and investors to get rich off of housing and treating it as a commodity and part of their investment portfolio instead of as a human right.
Talk about this.
So when people say housing is a human right, you have to ask, when push comes to shove and your real estate donors are telling you that they want to make a profit off this housing, are you going to say that this family has a right to that home?
Whoa.
And oftentimes politicians will play, no, that's where the buck stops. So instead, as a socialist, I have different proposals to solve the housing crisis. And it involves making sure that we're building housing in order to serve people's needs instead of to make the rich richer. That means repealing the Fair Cost Amendment, which was passed by Congress, signed by Bill Clinton, to limit the public housing stock. It means a massive federal jobs program to modernize our public housing stock, to expand it, to renovate vacant homes that are not being used right now, and create high-paying, quality jobs for people in our communities. It means putting the banks that created the housing crisis in the first place in 2008 and got bailed out while millions of families lost their homes. It means putting those banks under public control and forgiving mortgages and rent debt. And it means rent control. Those are the socialist solutions to housing that you're not going to hear from politicians that get their funding from the same real estate industry and possible dollars.
My next question is on immigration. How would you ensure that federal agents are held accountable for violations of our rights?
All right, this is something I know a little bit about because I'm a former federal prosecutor, special assistant, United States attorney. And the first thing we gotta do is make sure there's training. You know, Seth and I are both Marines. And I think we've had more training on how to take down somebody than these ICE agents. I was shocked to see 5 ICE agents couldn't take down Alex Peretti before he lost his life. And I'm sitting there saying, how in the world is that possible? So we have body cams. That's one thing. But here's the other thing that we got to understand is a lot of people in here probably want to abolish ICE. Am I right? Okay. But do you think that's going to happen in Massachusetts? Maybe if we all in here vote, it could. It's a slogan. It's an election year slogan. It's not going to happen, but that doesn't mean we can't have real reform. Is what I'm saying, and that's the key. We can greatly reform it. We can promise utopia. They can get up and say abolish ICE, and I'm going to make it happen. Just like every career politician will say something like that, and it doesn't happen. But we definitely can make sure that people are trained properly, that they have body cams, and that any type of incident is investigated. Right? The fact that Kristi Noem wouldn't even called the people domestic terrorists. I was the first one in running a race that called it out and called for her resignation. Okay, so there's things that we can do that are sensible, that are not election year slogans, pie in the sky that's not going to have. Chuck Schumer's not going to agree with that. Nancy Pelosi's not going to agree with a lot of these things that get promised in a primary because it's such red meat for folks. And I'm asking you, just think, how about though if we get people in there who will really truly reform it so that local law enforcement works with federal law enforcement to get bad guys out so that people who are here, who came here wanting to achieve the American dream, don't have to worry about being accosted during their daily life.
So first of all, ICE should be abolished, and I was the first candidate in the Democratic Party of Senate to say that loud and clear. But I was also the first Democrat to say that they need to be prosecuted, and that verb really matters. Because they need to be held accountable for their crimes. You cannot enforce the law if you think you're above it. And we have failed, candidly, the Democratic establishment has failed to hold the Trump administration accountable. That's why we've got a second Trump administration. Cannot let that happen again. Now, I put forward a piece of legislation called the Noem Act. Yes, it was a deliberate name. And what it does is it ensures that your civil rights are protected when they're violated by federal law enforcement, not just local. Many people don't know this right now. Sometimes I see these pictures of immigration enforcement with federal officials committing crimes while local officials step back. Because they know the local ones, they'll get prosecuted. We need to prosecute the federal ones as well, and I've introduced legislation to do that. I was also an original co-sponsor of the articles of impeachment against Kristi Noem. And she's a great example, by the way, of why it's not enough just to say, poof, go away. All right? She needs to be held accountable for her crimes as well. That's what prosecution means. He doesn't get to ride off into the sunset on her horse with Corey Lewandowski, okay? She needs to be held accountable. That's what accountability really means. And it's a great example of why this should apply across the board with the Trump administration. And you can't honestly look at Washington today and say that the Democratic establishment has succeeded in holding the Trump administration accountable. That's why I am not afraid to go on Fox News, to take these guys on, to be a progressive fighter that is willing to confront the MAGA Republicans. I went to Minneapolis. I was on the ground when that was happening because we need to stand in solidarity with the great patriots who are standing up for our immigrant communities all across America today.
Well, as a young black man, when I see Lorenzo Araujo or Yohan Guerrero or Renee Nicole Good murdered, I think of Tamir Rice, I think of Sandra Bland, I think of Michael Brown. I understand that there's a line that you can draw between the militarization of law enforcement in this country and the racism in that law enforcement and what's happening today with ICE terror in our communities. And the fact of the matter is that yes, ICE can be abolished. It's only existed since 2003. But the path to what the Trump administration is doing right now has been paved by both Democrats and Republicans. Tom Homan, who took over the operation in Minnesota, worked under the Obama administration as the director of removals, deportations, and received a medal for his work in the Obama administration. So you've seen the funding and militarization of ICE happen from both parties, and the reality is that we need to demilitarize our society. That includes the over $1 trillion we spend on bombing schools and hospitals abroad instead of building them here at home. And that includes the militarization of police and ICE. And also, it's clear that it's incumbent on us to fight against the demonization of our immigrant communities. Immigrants are not the reason that people are leaving Massachusetts. The reason people are leaving Massachusetts is because they can't afford to live here because of the billionaire class. And we need to fight to ensure that immigrants in our communities who are the backbone of our communities, including the agricultural industry that produces the food that we eat, that those immigrants deserve full and equal rights and a pathway to citizenship.
Our country is still in an active state of emergency from the opioid epidemic, and mental health crises are on the rise, not only for adults, but most disturbingly for our children. Appropriate supports are often difficult to access and even more difficult to maintain. How would you address the root causes for these issues and support sustainable recovery?
Thank you for the question. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. Listen, I'm the only one on the stage that's probably lived on food stamps, who's been homeless, and who was a high school dropout. I'm also the only one that wrote a book about his own battle of addiction when the Marine Corps got hurt in the Marine Corps, not in combat, but in combat training, had 2 spinal surgeries. And they came to me and said, John, the surgery went well, and guess what? You're in good luck. There's these new pills called OxyContin, and they're not addictive. And after 120 milligrams a day, 60 every 12 hours, after 3 months, I can assure you, I firsthand learned about shaking leg syndrome. And I learned how you're not even trying to get high, you just don't want to poop your pants because of the withdrawals, and that you're just trying to feel normal. But I got a plan. Healthcare, the reason that Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, was never affordable, 3 vertically integrated insurance companies from the manufacturing down to the retail control 95% of all American healthcare. That's not real capitalism, that's actually corporate socialism because we give them tax credits and these subsidies. We need a Teddy Roosevelt revolution. He came in and he took on the oil barons and the railroad tycoons and he busted trusts and he took on the billionaires. I got a plan that breaks those 3 companies up. Your microwave goes out tonight, you get online and you compare brands and prices from around the country. Try doing it for blood thinner. Try doing it for diabetes drugs. It's not allowed because there's no transparency. So you break them up, you require complete transparency. You break up the 3 PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers that control 80% of all drug prices, expand telehealth, and we can actually make healthcare more affordable. I have 4 employees. I write a check of $78,000 to insure them because I pay 100% for 4 employees. And I got a specific plan. This is personal to me, and I'll do something about it.
Well, I'm going to start where I began, which is that there is no debate. Healthcare is a human right, and we've got to make that clear across the land. That means everybody deserves healthcare. It doesn't matter who you are, how you identify, or whether you are an immigrant or a citizen, you deserve healthcare. Immigration status doesn't matter. Everyone should be on healthcare. That's the goal, first of all. The second, I want to say that healthcare is not just physical healthcare. It's mental health care as well. And I was the first sitting member of Congress to talk about my own mental health struggles when I disclosed dealing with post-traumatic stress after serving in Iraq. I didn't know if that might get me kicked out, as it has for many politicians in the past. But instead, it started me on a crusade to really address mental health in America. The first thing I did is I co-authored the bill to establish 988, the National Mental Health Hotline. 988 exists today, with I teamed up with veterans across the aisle. And that hotline, that 3-digit hotline alone, has brought down teen suicide 11% already. Now, I've also passed the Brandon Act, which makes it possible for service members to request mental health support outside their chain of command. I'm a patient of the VA myself. And I'll tell you a quick story. You know, a lot of people are wondering, what are we doing in Washington? Doesn't seem like anything's getting done. I got this question from an 8th grader. What are you doing up there? A little bit arrogant for an 8th grader, but it's a fair question, all right? And I told them about 988 and all these statistics about how calls are up, texts are way up, over 1,000%, because so many young people are getting help with mental health issues now because of 988. It was a terrible speech because you know what? 8th graders don't know statistics. And so it's totally over their head. But after that was over, a woman came up to me and said, "Sir, I just want you to know that your bill saved my daughter's life." And then she introduced me to know about it. That's why the time is.
Well, I was unfortunately a business major in college, so I can tell you that the monopolies that are dominating every single industry we live under are indeed an outgrowth of capitalism and the race to the bottom that happens under capitalism. And when you look at the issue of addiction and the issue of healthcare in general, it's again traced back to the fact that our health insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry are dominated by these billionaire corporate interests. You can directly trace the opioid epidemic to the fact that pharmaceutical giants like the Sackler family were trying to push knowingly addictive drugs onto patients, and they did it with the support and cover of politicians. And when you look at the issue of fighting against addiction today, again, it comes back to taking these giant corporations under public control. Why are we spending $30 billion every single year on pharmaceutical advertising when people don't even have basic health insurance as a right? So yes, I believe that universal health care, single payer health care needs to be passed at the federal level, and that includes mental health care for everybody. The second thing we have to understand is that addiction and addiction deaths are worse now than they were during the crack epidemic and the so-called war on drugs in the 1980s. And that's a direct factor of the fact that people do not feel hope in our society. That people are being squeezed and ground to the bone by the rising costs and the defuturization of our society, because we see the issues of climate change, artificial intelligence, no solutions are being put forward by the politicians in our society. And one of the biggest reasons that I'm a socialist is because I believe that we need to build hope for the future. And we should understand that, yes, in the richest country in the world, there's no reason for people to struggle with housing, healthcare, education, or anything else. And instead of feeling doom and gloom by looking at the news headlines and seeing the way that people are struggling, instead of feeling doom and gloom by looking at our bills every single month, we should feel hope and optimism living in a society that's actually using its resources to meet people's needs, but that requires taking the power out of the hands of the billionaires and the politicians that represent them.
And now we're going to move to the yes and no portion of this discussion. So if, just like you saw with the State House candidates, you wouldn't mind rising. I'm going to go through the list of questions. In your response, just hold up the appropriate card, okay? Do you believe that housing and healthcare are human rights, regardless of race, employment status, income, sexual orientation, gender identity, or immigration? Would you support a national ban on no-fault evictions?
Federal ban?
A national ban, a federal ban, yes. Pivoting back to healthcare, would you fight to guarantee timely, quality healthcare for all residents in the United States. As part of a complete recovery program, do you support providing housing first in order to keep a person safe and encourage them into future treatment? We're going to pivot into immigration. Do you support guaranteeing legal representation for every immigrant facing deportation who cannot afford an attorney?
Including those charged with felonies?
We're not putting caveats in this particular question. Legal representation for every immigrant facing deportation.
Not if they're charged with rape.
Makes sense.
Do you support continued legal protection that allow our Haitian and Syrian immigrants with TPS to live and work in the United States? Would you support creating a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants who have built their lives in the United States? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for sitting with us tonight and sharing your views in open conversation. This is a highly democratic act. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to the people and to let them listen to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for the players, you have the option of playing with us for the rest of this discussion or taking your leave. It's up to you.
I'll sit with you.
Alejandra, will come and close this event
Understood. I
out. We
think you
still
should-
have a closing.
should hire him as your speech
Wonderful. So I know you've been sitting a long time.
Hey,
Almost there.
Hey, how are you? Fine. Fine, thank
Good
you.
evening.
My cousin on.
My name is Alejandro Juarez Diaz,
Is that
and
right?
I'm an advocacy leader for Hebron. I am
Joe
grateful to be here with you all today. Thank you
Yes,
for
sir.
joining us for the People's Agenda Town Hall. Thank you, candidates, for spending the evening with the people of the Merrimack Valley. Today, you were able to present the People's Agenda to elected officials and candidates on the top 3 priorities identified: housing, immigration, and healthcare. Candidates, tonight we accomplished something truly special. You spent your time with the community that you represent. You listened to the priorities of the people. You answered the questions. And tonight, the community saw you and the community listened to you. Just as we expect our elected officials to make the choice to step up into the power of representing our community with accountability, honor, and respect, we must take a moment to think about the choices that we as an individual and as a community need to make. Creating positive change for our communities will require each and one of us to ask ourselves, will we step up into our own power and show up to vote? Who here is ready to show up to vote? Take a moment to look around the room. Really look at it. Look at the people who attended today. I see powerful people who made the choice to show up. This is what people power looks like. Individually, we can achieve great things. Together, we can achieve so much more. I hope that tonight you were able to feel that you were heard and represented as a community. I hope that you see that you are not alone. I believe that by coming together, we can truly create positive changes for our community, a community that cares and a community that listens. We must also recognize that it also takes continuing to show up. I show up because I believe everyone deserves to feel safe, to have access to housing and healthcare, as many of you have said, a human right. A human right regardless of characteristics and immigration status. I show up because I believe we have the power to fight for a world in which future generations will thrive on a community that truly cares. Will you continue to show up? There are 2 things that I want to leave you with tonight. There are some key dates and a call to action. First, Saturday, August 22nd is the last day to register to vote. That is exactly 1 week from today. August 22nd through the 28th for in-person early voting. August 25th for vote by mail, and September 1st is primary day, only 17 days away. Secondly, everyone will receive a commitment card. There are 2 questions. What are you most fired about after the town hall? And 2, what is one action that you will take to keep up this momentum after today? The QR code on the commitment card leads you to a Google form where you can indicate what you are interested in getting involved in, but also you can provide feedback on the town hall today. So let's continue to have the conversations among our friends, family, and community. Let's stand in our power and show up to vote. Stay tuned for the next steps on the People's Agenda. We will be in touch as we collectively decide how to keep building power and how to hold our elected officials accountable. May you all have a wonderful evening, and thank you for showing up today.